Bitch, where's my money? If you want to help me out, you can subscribe to me on Patreon, which is Grimachu, on Subscribestar, which is Grim-Jim, or if you want to make a one-off donation to help support me and keep the channel going, you can do so at paypal.me, jdesborough. Thanks. Hello, today we'll be reviewing Legend of the Five Rings, but first, Election Party is available for pre-order at electionpartygame.com, so head on over there if you like satire on politics, mostly Western politics, mostly US and UK, but if all goes well, we'll probably expand in the future, and it takes no prisoners and happily targets people on all sides. I'll append a proper advert at the end. If you're running into issues ordering, check your PayPal if you're paying using PayPal, and if you're still running into any issues, contact me. Rachel's running the back end, so I don't have a lot of control or options, but I can at least make note that you've paid and we can figure that all out. Teething troubles, you know how it goes. So anyway, yeah, enough of that. This is a second printing, first edition of Legend of the Five Rings, and it's a fantastic game. Not too complicated, not too simple, does everything pretty much the right way, I think, and we played enormous campaign of this, an enormous campaign of this that went on for years. We'd even dress up in costumes and buy each other toy plastic swords of the right colours for the right clan and so on, the playbooks and everything. We had a fantastic time, despite one of the characters being based on Monkey. But you can't have everything. But yeah, we had a really good time with it, some really memorable moments, a tea ceremony on a ship in a storm that got the highest roll ever for anything in the entire campaign, riding to the north, riding to the south, running this way, that way and the other, taking in the entire country, back and forth, all over the place, chasing down trouble of one kind or another. And I really built up ninjas to be this thing that didn't really exist, but when they did turn out to exist, they were really, really powerful and scary and had all kinds of sneaky tactics that I came up with, such as hiding themselves in the stuffing of your futon and then putting a razor-sharp tube into your neck so you would bleed out without ever even awakening. Shit like that. It was a really, really fun game. We ended up uniting the minor clans and leading them to take over the Empire, which had been usurped by an evil doppelganger of the Emperor. In short, I have a lot of emotional attachment to this game, invested an awful lot in it, had a really great time with it, thought it was fantastic. And as the first edition, you know, this version really, really kind of set out the culture, gave you hooks into the idea of how the society would work, really laid it all out and gave you a thorough understanding and hook into the way that it was played and the culture that you were in, and even the very, very limited forms of character choice that were brought about by this were all great. And there's a list of syllables in there which I turned into a random table that actually produced some fairly half-decently sounding Japanese names for the characters. So that was fun. In short, those are my credentials. Never played the card game, not interested. Never played the miniatures game, not interested. Played the role-playing game to death, loved it, did fantastic things, had a really long campaign with a really great group of close friends. Into the current edition, which is a Fantasy Flight Games version. Hardcover, full-colour interior, everything you expect from a modern, relatively high-budget RPG. But it's Fantasy Flight Games, so you know already where this is going, don't you? The artwork's a bit odd. For me, it feels a lot more Chinese than Japanese. Just the whole presentation seems like it'd be more suited to a sort of Three Kingdoms sort of era thing. It just doesn't feel sufficiently Japanese. And looking at the involved artists, there are quite a few non-Japanese names that pop up here and Chinese names that pop up in here. which may explain some of that. And I would guess that they're recycling quite a lot of the art from the card game, which I never took an interest in. Which, you know, fair enough. You got a budget. The entries on the world and the hooks into the world and the ideas of the world are very, very sparingly set out in this version. I mean, essentially, that, in no small part, is pretty much it. 18 pages, not even that. 15 pages of exposition and explanation, and not a lot more, really. And then you're into playing the game, and if you don't read the whole book, there's a lot of setting information and so on that you're going to miss. It doesn't grab you and explain the world to you in the way that the earlier editions did. And I think that's a huge problem with this version of the game. If you're coming to it fresh and new, you are not going to be grabbed by this in any way. If you're familiar with the background from the other media, books, board games, card games, previous editions, whatever, then you're going to be okay. Otherwise, I think it spends far too much time on the rules. Well, and that kind of gives away what a lot of the problem is here, doesn't it, really? And novelty dice. Novelty fucking dice. This is a plague on this hobby. I hate it. I loathe it. Fantasy Flight does it purely to try and weasel more money out of you. There is no good, decent reason to have speciality dice. They add very little, if anything. The prices are hiked on them. You can generally only get them from the company that makes the game. So if the edition goes out, if you lose your dice, if that company goes bust or whatever, you're fucked. Now there is a table telling you how to translate your D12s and your D6s, and hey, I'm glad to see the D12 get in on some action for once. It's a much underrated dice. There is a table, but that's immediately going to slow down action, even more than reading off weird symbols and trying to translate them into what's actually happening in the game. Yeah, that's already an issue. If you have to cross-reference against the table, even more of an issue, slowing things down. And then there's all manner of exceptions and so on in the rules, according to what techniques or magic or advantages or disadvantages that you've got that determine what happens in relation to these dice. It's a huge clusterfuck, and I can see it bringing play right the way down to a crawl until you get really familiar with it, which means your early sessions, which are often quite key for getting people hooked into playing a game, they're probably screwed. Yeah, it's going to be hard to grab people. It's going to seem unwieldy and clumsy and slow, and it's just going to lack a lot of the elegance and simplicity that the previous editions may have had to one degree or another, depending which edition you're talking about. So, fuck you, speciality dice. Fuck you in your stupid ass. And that's the review, pretty much. Because everything else that's wrong stems from the choice to use speciality dice, giving you sort of narrative cues rather than just a simple progression of success, like, you know, narrow, average, great, or whatever. Instead of that, we have to interpret all these symbols and negotiate the narrative from there. Now, I'm not against story games. I'm neither a story gamer nor a trad gamer in that sort of sense. I like aspects of both. But this is one of these things that, like so many games lately, just seem to fall in the middle and satisfy neither market. So it has story game elements, which are going to piss off your trad gamers, and it has traditional elements that are going to piss off your story gamers. And so many exceptions and specialities and special interpretations that it just dooms itself. This is a problem that has existed since Big Eye, Small Mouth. Right? Simple, easy to interpret, cool mechanic, utterly fucked by everything you pile on top of it. So, yeah, it doesn't matter that these things give you narrative cues and ticks. You may not be able to use them, they don't necessarily make sense, and they interact with everything else. But, yeah, that's the review. That's the review. Speciality dice fuck the entire game, and it's really unfortunate. Okay, let's try and pad this out some then, I guess. You still got your rings as your stats, which sort of ties into Asian philosophy and so on. That's all fair enough. That's all good and shiny and whatever else. D12s are for skills, so the way that works is that your rings is like your potential and your basic ability, but your skills are the D12, and they're much more effective, I guess, so that helps offset the raw physicality versus skill. Sorry about that, I don't know where my phone is, but it keeps beeping. Character creation, it's expanded a bit on the old editions. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad. You've now got artisans and courtiers on top of your samurai and your shugenja. Clans and so on give you bonuses and penalties and things as per, give you access to certain special abilities and things as you go on. Yeah, that's all fair enough. Then you've got your sub-families within your clan, and then you have your classes within that. So all the usual clans are there, pretty much. It doesn't seem to have been particularly updated with the consequences of various things that have happened. So, you know, do big events actually shape and change the world, like the betrayal that the crab did, or do they not? Who friggin' knows? I mean, you can just tell, looking at this sort of list of skills and techniques and so on, that it's vastly more complicated than the older versions were, while still trying to tie itself to more narrative mechanics, thereby pissing off the very people it's trying to appeal to. And this is all, you know, this is all character choices, explanations of various rules, personalities, death, ancestry, advantages and disadvantages, which begins the complications. Techniques do that too. Spells all have their own particular special rules and weaknesses and strength. You know what? No. Right. Speciality dice. They fuck the entire game, and that is genuinely the review. Style 3, because it doesn't really look Japanese enough. Substance 2, because it just misses a lot of vital information. Avoid like the plague. Oh, alright, fine, I'll go into it a bit more. Look, here's the fucking problem, right? It is the novelty dice. Because that's trying to create a story, narrative-oriented game with wishy-washy, vague interpretations. But at the same time, you've got all these layers of advantages and disadvantages, of rituals and magic, of techniques and specialities, and all the rest of it, and they make ninjas fucking explicit. There's another problem. All of that layered on top, which removes the simplicity and narrative impetus that you get from the basic dice mechanic, and it screws it up. So it basically satisfies neither the narrative-oriented story gamer nor the crunch-oriented traditional player. Now, the old version was rules medium, I guess, but it did what it did very well, and there were reasons for everything. There's so much setting missing here. There's so much tangled complication and special rules and special exceptions and bonuses and all the rest of it, that it just all gets in the way of the core game. And it is so utterly scant, virtually devoid of setting material, that you have to kind of rely on the art or already knowing the game. And the art, much of it, doesn't evoke Japan. There's a term, mid-Atlantic, that we use to describe entertainment that is neither American nor British, but is maybe trying to appeal to both, and therefore doesn't really hook into the cultural sensibilities of either one. Whatever the Asian equivalent of that is, this is it. I am bitterly, bitterly disappointed in this game, just as I was with Over the Edge. Now, hopefully that's the last of my disappointments for a while, because I did back the SLA Industries Kickstarter. I won't regard that as being wasted money, whatever happens, because I still love the SLA guys, even if they don't necessarily feel the same way about me anymore. But I've still got some other games that I've bought over the last year that I haven't gotten around to reviewing. I'll get to those. But rest assured, if I do new editions of any of my games, I will not be fucking them up as colossally as the last few things I've reviewed. Zang. Tonight on Newsload, Prince Andrew denies further allegations of sexual assault, claiming that his genitals were taped to the wall of a gallery at the time. But first, an election broadcast by The Election Party.
It's time for everybody to play Election Party.
It is the duty of party workers to own a copy of this game.
It's time for everybody to become a candidate.
It's all part of a Jewish Zionist lizard people plot. They put chemicals in the cards that turn your dice gay.
I'm just gonna be real about this, honey, okay?
You buy this shit, and you're a fascist.
You've got a game. It's called Election Party. And if you don't play it, you're a cuck.
A cisgender.
Capital C, U-C-K, you're a big, giant cuck.
Heterosexual.
Cultural, Marxist.
White.
Frankfurt School degenerate.
Fascist.
That's you if you don't play our game.
Fascist.
Now why would you want to play our game if you're such a based red pillar?
Politics are a show. We might as well be honest about it. You don't want everybody to think that you're a fucking cuck, do you?
Nazi. I don't know, man. It ain't NASCAR. Sounds like something that appeal to queers and
All I want for Christmas is election party.
You anything you want. You just have to talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man. The Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it. You even think it. You ain't have it.